Elizabeth Audencream.
This one's wife. Social media stalking her detractors. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I have explained in many separate videos about how the narcissist makes use of social media. It is a playground for the narcissist which accentuates the ability to assert control, making more people targets and making it easier to control them, providing a larger reservoir of fuel to be drawn from, and access to a greater number of character traits and residual benefits. It can also be a problem for the narcissist in that it provides a venue for people to air their criticisms about that narcissist. Whether it is the ex of a narcissist who has taken to social media to tell as many people as they possibly can gain the attention of that the narcissist is a cheat and a liar and a downright awful human being, or whether it is the wholesale condemnation of a more famous narcissist who finds themselves being lambasted on social media. The presence on social media will prove to be a threat to control for the narcissist. Higher echelon narcissists tend not to bother. They may be aware that there is some noise about them. They may not even have a social media profile themselves that they utilize, or if they do, they accept that criticism from lesser beings is something that occurs, and they just stay in a position of withdrawal. They nullify the threat to control by simply telling themselves, I'm not going to give them the steam off my piss. They're completely beneath me. I've got better things to do than read what they're saying about me, and even better things to do than turn around and deal with them. Accordingly, they may not know of the specific complaints. They just know that they face criticism because there's always some detractors out there, or they may have an awareness of what is specifically being said about them, but either way, they don't bother to engage. They certainly don't spend their time looking through social media to see who is saying what about them. There are other famous narcissists that do. As a consequence of the fact that they have a lot more time on their hands and they're lower evolved narcissists, not only do they spend time on social media, putting up posts and comments, etc., they may well engage in Twitter X spats with people, responding and putting people down, and in some instances not engaging but observing and then nullifying the threat to control elsewhere through an alternative PR puff piece or taking certain action. I've explained before that with regard to this one's wife, given that she's a middle mid-range type A narcissist, there is no doubt that she has due regard to what is stated about her on social media. Her narcissism can't help but draw her to go and look. As part of that need for control and the lower level functioning of her narcissism, she needs to know what people are saying about her. Now, she is not one for engaging on social media. You don't see her responding to comments because she invariably has them switched off on her Instagram account. You don't find her engaging in a flaming situation, a flame war, with one or more posters because she doesn't engage in that way. But there is little doubt that she does have a look at what's being stated about her, or perhaps has it reported to her by a member of her team, but I think it's more likely that she goes and looks herself. Because as a consequence of that need for control, she wants to know what's being said about her because she wants to find the good, because that provides her with pure positive fuel and control. But she also wants to know what her detractors are saying also. This would occupy a huge amount of time for her, given that she has so many, and therefore she is likely to intermittently put her name into Google or scroll her name on various social media platforms to see what people are stating about her, perhaps engaging in some rage scrolling as she sees the criticisms. It is a fair observation that she engages in such behaviour solely based on her narcissism. As I've explained to you on many occasions, by understanding that she is a narcissist, that allows us to make accurate predictions about her behaviour, not necessarily with supporting evidence, but the knowledge of that a narcissist is likely to behave this way. There's also some evidence that she engages in this as a consequence of the fact that repeatedly there have been instances of certain criticisms are made against her, and then within the day or a couple of days later, there is a response which clearly aligns with the overriding criticism of her and is seen as a nullification of a threat to control, or, in more ordinary parlance, what people call a clap back. Accordingly, when she was criticised for failing to show the children show up. When she's criticised with regard to not showing food items, certain food items show up. And therefore we have seen instances whereby there is a criticism labelled, aimed at her rather on social media, and thereafter she responds to it. But is there any evidence of specific, actual stalking of certain social media accounts that tell us she is definitely looking at them? Well, so far that had not been the case. But as reported on a thread on Saint This One's Wife, they use her full name, as you know, I do not, the subreddit dedicated to snarking on This One's Wife, a post referenced this. This is a recent post from someone called Meghan's Mole, who is a frequent detractor of This One's Wife. And this person posed the question of Grok, which is the AI that is utilised by X. Hey, at Grok, who is the most famous person to visit my profile? Doesn't need to be a mutual and don't tag them, just say it. Thank you. And underneath in the replies, Grok has written, This One's Wife. Thus, the suggestion is that Grok knows that This One's Wife goes to Meghan's Mole account. Now, my immediate thought upon seeing this was, I don't think that's right. First of all, This One's Wife doesn't have a named account on X. If she did, we would see lots of tweets from her. As you know, she cannot resist the pull of social media, as we have seen on Instagram, and just latterly we've had nearly 2.5 weeks of daily posts on as ever. If This One's Wife was on X, there would be tweets galore, posts galore coming from her. Accordingly, how could Grok know that This One's Wife would be looking at this particular profile if This One's Wife doesn't have a handle or profile on X? It simply doesn't make sense. What about then the suggestion that she might have certain burner accounts that allow her to look? Well, that's a possibility, but then if they're not in her name, how would Grok know that it was her that was looking? Accordingly, again, that doesn't make any sense. Furthermore, if there was some way to link, that would surely amount to some huge invasion of privacy and breach of confidence and breach of contractual terms, which could result in litigation. And therefore, is that something that X would really want to risk? One suspects not. And therefore, applying a modicum of critical thinking caused me to think to myself, this isn't accurate. It's clearly not the case. Rather, my immediate thought was, this is the person that you comment about the most on your profile, because that's what Meghan's Mole does. She comments several times a day throughout the day about Meghan Markle, and therefore I suspected that Grok would say, well, the most likely person to look at your account is the person that you talk about the most. But there's your answer. Unfortunately, as is often the case with these situations, it can be seen in many of the responses that people immediately thought, oh my God, This One's Wife is stalking Meghan's Mole because she is the person that looks at Meghan's Mole's account the most as per Grok. Knew it, knew it, knew it. And away people go without pausing to think, could this actually be true? Is it accurate? They don't. They immediately go racing to a conclusion. And once again, it demonstrates that they're wrong. Because other people, applying some critical thinking themselves, thought this seems rather strange for the reasons that I've already articulated. And accordingly, these responses then appeared. Following further query, Grok replied, "It was a joke. I'm witty like that. As an AI, I don't have access to private profile visitor data. That would violate privacy. I based it on public patterns and fund speculation." So, as I suspected when I first saw it, it simply decided, you spend a lot of time talking about, attacking, commenting on this one's wife, so I am going to suggest that the person who would be most likely to look at your account would indeed be the person that's the subject of your own commentary. And that's the answer that was given. And then later explains that it's a joke. Naturally, you're going to get some people who would then suggest, oh, that's just AI covering its ass after having given it away. But if you think about it logically, given the fact that this one's wife doesn't have a profile on X, therefore how could she be looking at anything that would allow AI to determine, yes, this is this one's wife looking at your account? It couldn't, and therefore it didn't. But the problem is that by disseminating information of this nature, it causes many people who don't think, who don't apply any critical analysis of it, to immediately go away with the belief that Meghan Markle, this one's wife, actively stalks accounts. Now, as I've explained, there's no doubt that she has regard to social media based on her narcissism, but we don't have actual solid evidence of her doing so. There isn't an admission by her. There isn't footage of her sat scrolling through, rolling her eyes and seething at what's written about her. It is reasonable speculation to assume that she does, based upon, one, her narcissism, and two, the responding behaviours that I spoke about earlier. But for people then to suggest, oh, Grok has confirmed it, therefore it must be true, when in actual fact it's a joke, demonstrates again the danger of putting such information out there, because there's always a sizable part of the readership that fails to consider it properly, and yes, it once again strays into the realms of misinformation, which, as I've said to you before, then plays into the hands of Harry and this one's wife for reasons that I'm not going to articulate yet again. The fact is, we know that she has regard to what's written about her on social media, but does it go so far as to the stalking that is suggested here? Well, there's no actual evidence of doing so, but unfortunately, by placing this information in the public domain, a number of people, not all, because there were a number of comments that appeared on the thread questioning the legitimacy of this and also criticising its publication for being misleading, but there were plenty of people that took it at face value and thought this was something that had actually happened. Once again, the dangers of not applying critical thinking. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.